Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy met with US Envoy Keith Kellogg in Kyiv amid a push to end the war. Following the meeting, Zelenskyy said it was important for Ukraine to maintain strong ties with the United States, whereas Kellogg said the goal of the trip was to listen to Ukraine's concerns and report back on them to the White House. Meanwhile, Elon Musk doubled down on his criticism of Zelenskyy, backing Donald Trump's latest attack on the Ukrainian leader. He said that it was right of Trump to keep Zelenskyy out of the peace talks. As the criticism against the Ukrainian president builds, European allies Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer have planned visits to Washington. The duo will be meeting Trump to defend Ukraine's stance in the negotiations. Joining us to discuss this evolving situation on the Russia and Ukraine peace talks, we're first joined by Alexander Kryev, who is a senior lecturer at the Kyiv Molia Academy, expert at Ukrainian PRISM think tank, joining us from Kyiv. Thank you very much for your time, Alexander. I'd first like to look at the response that we're getting from America and specifically what we've seen from Elon Musk and Donald Trump in the last 24 hours. The rhetoric that has been used to describe Volodymyr Zelenskyy, saying that the Ukrainian people do not support him. Is that something you agree with?
That's definitely a lot of frustration with the latest remarks of Donald Trump and of Elon Musk concerning Ukraine, concerning Ukrainian struggle against Russian aggression. This frustration is understandable, but at the same time, I do not think that Ukrainians are utterly dismissing Donald Trump as an ally and as a leader of the free world. Of course, we see a lot of memes. Of course, we see a lot of social distrust to him as an institutional partner, but there is a great deal of understanding that without the United States, without the support from our American partners, the security of Ukraine will be jeopardized. And there is a great understanding that all the support provided during the last nearly 3 years was inalienable with the success of Ukrainian armed forces and with the existence of Ukraine as it is. So basically, it's no more than a quarrel or misunderstanding between Ukrainians and Trump, Ukrainians and Elon Musk. We did see that Trump can be positive on Ukraine, on weapons, on supporting Ukrainian statehood and everything else. So it is necessary to understand that Trump is unpredictable, both for Ukraine and for Russia as well.
Something that's come out overnight is a comment from Mike Waltz, who is the White House press secretary and, of course, national security advisor. He has said that the mineral deal that Trump has suggested should be signed by Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy, on the other hand, has, of course, said that he does not want to sell his country. Alexander, given the support that has been given to Ukraine, is it in Zelenskyy's best interest to make sure this deal does get done?
It is definitely in our best interest to make this deal a working document, but at the same time, there are different types of deal, you know. The Ukrainian proposal is that there should be a common enterprise comprised 50-50% with Ukrainian and American capital, with Ukrainian personnel, Ukrainian working force, American capital and American technologies. This can work well for the Americans. So it's basically not given all the rare earth minerals and all the metallurgy to the Americans. It's definitely creating a new investment opportunity for them. In this regard, yes, this deal might work. But as it is presented by Trump, I'm not sure he is right on the numbers. Because during the last 3 years, the United States provided more than $70 billion for Ukraine, both in weapons and microfinancial support. It is not $500 billion that Trump is talking about. So basically, I think it is more an issue of math and is more an issue of business negotiation than the political one.
Also joining us to discuss this topic is Gilbert Doctorow, a Russian affairs expert who's joining us from Brussels in Belgium. Gilbert, thank you very much for being here. I'd like to bring back to you the point that was made by Trump and Musk in terms of their support for Zelenskyy. Do you think that this is a clear shift now in the US and their support for either side in this war?
It's a shift in the US policy, but it is not a shift in the thinking of Donald Trump. Everything that has happened in the last 7 days was very closely coordinated and had one purpose: to keep the war parties of the EU and of Ukraine away from the peace talks, because the participation of any of the EU countries and institutions, or the participation of Mr. Zelensky's group has only one purpose: to foil the creation of a peace treaty that will be signed and is durable. There is no confusion here. Mr. Trump understands perfectly that the mineral deal is a non-issue. The mineral deal is there to be rejected by the Ukrainians so that Mr. Trump can say they have not expressed an interest in peace and in a final settlement. Just as the questionnaire sent to the Europeans, how many troops they will put up to enforce the peace if one is signed, was not serious. It was serious for them. It was serious for Washington. Washington wanted them to fail. They failed. And therefore, there's no reason for them to be present at the peace talks. There is no confusion in the mind of Mr. Trump and his close advisors. What each of them is doing, whether it's Waltz or Hegseth or Witkoff, it's all perfectly coordinated with everything that Trump is saying.
In terms of Russia's desire for a peace deal, is it something that you think is sincere? Hundreds of drones released overnight, killing so far 6 civilians in Ukraine. Also a continued fight on the front lines. Why is it in Vladimir Putin's interest to sign a peace deal when it seems on the surface that his army is doing better than the Ukrainian?
Well, it's not on the surface. It's all the way down to the bottom. The Ukrainian army is not destroyed. The Ukrainian army is not humiliated or on the point of running from the battlefield. I want to be perfectly clear in saying that there have been successes on the Ukrainian side in recruiting the young, newly admitted to service generation of 18 to 25. The Ukrainians do have arms. The Biden administration shipped them massive amount of arms before it left office. Therefore, the Ukrainian situation at present is not hopeless, but to continue it is to destroy the Ukrainian nation. Because as you say, the Russians have a preponderance of force and there's no reason for them not to use it. When you are in this situation where there's no peace negotiation, there is no reason for you to stop fighting. And the Russians are pressing that point, that the only logical action for Ukraine is capitulation if it wants to exist as a nation, and if it wants to have a demography that is sustainable. The Ukrainians have lost more than half of their population. It was a 40 million man and woman country. It is now an 18 million man and woman country. If this continues, it will be a zero population country, as Mr. Trump clearly stated. Time to stop fighting, and the first to make the move will be the Ukrainians by getting rid of Mr. Zelenskyy and his war party.
Gilbert, I want to challenge you on a couple of things that you said there. Volodymyr Zelenskyy has been talking about engaging in a peace deal for some months now. Also, he has said that he wants to be part of these talks with Russia. So in that instance, is Zelenskyy not looking towards a peace deal? And would it not be helpful if he was part of discussions with Russian leaders rather than being put on the side?
We have seen all of his so-called peace initiatives over the last year. His idea of a peace deal is that the loser, Ukraine, will take all of the advantages that the winner expects to get. He wants to impose reparations. He wants to impose a withdrawal of Russian forces from Ukraine. He's behaving as if he won the war. Those so-called peace terms are not peace terms. They are unrealistic, totally unrealistic. They are delusional. And the only victim in this is the Ukrainian nation that is bleeding because of Mr. Zelenskyy's tenacious hold on power. To look at opinion polls in Ukraine today is meaningless when they have no free press, none. The only journalists who existed for the last 2 years in Ukraine were on US aid money. As they say, they were propagandists paid by the Biden administration. The Ukrainians have had no chance to look at the reality facing them on the ground and in the world at large. Therefore, their opinions are unfortunately underinformed, and they are not capable of responding to BBC journalists who ask them what they think about Zelenskyy. The country is at the breaking point, and Mr. Zelenskyy doesn't give a damn. He will be happy to see more millions die so long as he holds power. That is
Alexander,
not tenable.
sorry to cut you off, Gil, but we only have a minute left, and I'd like to bring in Alexander just for his response to what you said there.
Well, there's a short response. Of course, I do respect a lot of opinions that Mr. Gilbert said, but unfortunately, half of that is still propagandish stuff concerning free press or the absence of free press, which is totally not true, concerning the not willingness of Ukrainians to fight, which is also not true. We started this war because Russians attacked, not because Zelenskyy wanted it. We start killing Russians en masse because Russians are the aggressor, not Zelenskyy. And basically, we don't give a damn who the president is. We're not Russians. We're not following the leader. We're following our country and our freedom. So basically, it's not the issue of Zelenskyy or somebody else. It's the issue of Russians just getting the hell out of here, or at least stop their aggression unprovoked and totally non-legit for this type of the diplomacy. So basically, it's all about Ukrainian survival and nothing more. It's not about politics. Politics are not as important for Ukrainians as for Russians. But of course, Russians do not have any sufficient politics of themselves.
Alexander Kryev and Gilbert Doxrow, thank you both.